Hello and welcome to another episode of Underdog Investing. So today I'd like to talk about 4 different ways in which we can avoid FOMO. FOMO stands for fear of missing out, and what that usually means is, for example, when a stock starts going up in price and we think it's a good opportunity and we start getting quite anxious, and this usually leads to poor investing decisions. And FOMO is something we really want to avoid if we want to be successful in the stock market long term. And I've personally come across FOMO myself a few times as I've started investing, and there's a few different ways that I've found quite helpful in order to avoid FOMO, and I'd like to share these with you today. So the first way I found quite helpful is to establish a small position. Now this serves 2 purposes. The first one is to allow yourself to be in the game, and also prevents you from being overexposed. Now scenario 1 and 2 show how establishing a small position results in a win-win situation. So for example, in scenario 1, let's say the stock starts going up in price. You establish a small position at X and the stock starts going down again. Now this is actually an advantage to you because you've only put in a small amount of money, and now you have quite a significant amount of capital that you can inject into the dip. So that brings down your average cost significantly. Now in scenario 2, let's say the same thing happens initially, so the stock starts going up and you buy. It's also positive if the stock market starts rallying even further, because for obvious reasons you make gains on the amount that you put in. Now the second thing would be dollar cost averaging. Generally what this means is to put a set amount in at regular intervals. And this is very helpful, but what I've found is by tweaking it a little bit you can get a much better average price. So the way I like to see it is putting a slightly varied amount also at regular intervals. So scenario 3 and 4 I think demonstrate this. So if you look at scenario 3, you've got regular intervals, so first month, second month and third month, and then you've got set amounts, so $4,000 you're putting in every time, and that leads to quite a good average price. But if you look at scenario 4, again you've got regular intervals, so first month, second month and third month, but you're varying your the amount you put in at each interval based on what the price is at the time. And I think this, as long as you're quite sensible, you should be able to figure out when the price has rallied significantly, you generally want to put in slightly less, and when you feel like the price has pulled back quite significantly, you generally want to put in a bit more. And what happens is in scenario 4 you get a much better average price compared to your scenario 3. Now one of the really important ways in which we can avoid FOMO is meditating, as silly as it sounds. So there's 2 different types of decision making. The first one is emotional and the second one is logical. Emotional decision making leads to FOMO, and so our job as an investor is to try and move away from emotional decision making and move towards logical decision making. And I find meditation very helpful to do this. Now the way in which I meditate is I have 3 steps. So if you look at the orange highlighted areas, the first thing I'd like to do is to become present. And the way I do that is by getting into a comfortable position and focusing on my breathing. Once I become present, I start to observe my thoughts, and I do this in a third person point of view and also in a non-judgmental way. So I don't really react to the thoughts, I just observe them. And these 2 things usually take about 10 to 15 minutes to fully get into this mode, and then this leads to you thinking logically and in a solution orientated way, and this is one of the ways in which I find clarity, and it also reduces the chances of FOMO. Now what I listen to when I meditate there's 2 main things. So the first one is alpha waves, the second thing is Release Meditation Technique by Brendan Burchard. You can find both of these on YouTube if you just type them in on YouTube. And finally, this might sound a bit quite simple, but doing your own research is very important. There's two main types of research, qualitative and quantitative. So just briefly, qualitative is when you look at CEO interviews and you identify what the CEO's mission and vision for the company are. Quantitative research is when you look at earnings reports and numbers. Now, each one of these types of research are very useful on its own, but when you combine them, it becomes very synergistic. Doing your own research leads to a greater amount of clarity, and with clarity, you have a less chance of getting into the FOMO mode, and it also gives you a higher conviction for the stock. And this leads to you avoiding panic selling, which can be equally dangerous. So that's the end of the video. If you enjoyed that, please like and subscribe. And if there's anything you want to discuss or ask me, please go ahead and comment. And if you found it useful in any way, please do share the video. Thank you very much.